Hey guys, what is happening? And welcome to tonight's live stream. So, tonight's live stream is about New Zealand. Obviously, we're closely monitoring the situation in New Zealand because they are, in my opinion, 2, 3 months ahead of us here in Canada. And it's interesting to see what's coming out, the different articles and different news that's coming out about what's going on in the housing market in New Zealand. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all you guys because we hit 3,000 subscribers, which just blows my mind. Like literally, I started this channel properly in July last year, and it blew my mind when we had like 100 subscribers, which I think was in September. And then like it just grew and grew and it keeps growing. And a lot of you are long-time supporters, and I can't thank you enough for that. And anyway, enough with the soppy stuff. Let's get into it, guys. So interestingly enough, the thing that I want to go through here about the housing market. So I was just actually looking. It's always good to get a visual on what a house looks like in New Zealand, and it looks flipping beautiful by the looks of it. Anyway, this house, but this house is going for $1 million New Zealand dollars, which when you actually compare it to some places in Canada, I mean, you look at this house and the views and everything like that. I mean, again, it just makes like everywhere just makes Canada look insanely overvalued. I mean, this place is like look at the views out the windows and everything like that. Like I think 1 million New Zealand dollars. I'm just trying to work out how much that is to Canadian dollars. 831,000 Canadian dollars. If this was a house in an equivalent sort of place on Vancouver Island, we would be talking about like probably 1.5 million at least. So it's absolutely insane. But we're going to move into an article anyway that came out of Macro Business. A lot of good data from this Australian actually place. They put out a lot of data in their articles, which I always like, and it's about macro. So I'm going to pull up that article and show you what they're saying. So basically, mortgage earthquake erupts under New Zealand housing market. And then it basically goes into detail here by unconventional economist. Oh man, I'm liking this macro business even more. They seem like they're on the right wavelength, and it's actually Australian because it's .com.au, which is Australian. So interestingly enough, so basically they've got the mortgage rates here, and you can see how they've gone parabolic, and we can relate the same thing is happening here in Canada. The same thing is happening in the United States, albeit they were a little bit ahead of us in the rate hiking cycle. And that's what's so important, because time is really important when you're dealing with this type of situation that we're having unfolding here. Because one thing that I want to point out is rate holds, because a lot of the activity that we even see to this day in the housing market here in Canada is people with approvals for mortgages which are significantly lower than the current rates. And once all those people are out the market, once those rate holds and pre-approvals are done in 30 to 60 days, the market's going to go even worse. So you are just seeing the very beginning of what's coming, very beginning. Think about this. What we could have happen in the fall is like a perfect storm in real estate, because you could have demand just absolutely drop off a cliff and it doesn't return. And then really it would be next spring when people who hold off, they were trying to wait for better pricing. And then next spring they come around to list their house and there's nobody to buy. And really, I find it unpredictable to think about next spring at this point, because I think we're going to be in a recession by next spring. So I think the environment is going to be drastically different, and it adds a certain degree of unpredictability to what the Bank of Canada is going to do in that situation. We really don't know what they're going to do if the economy is going into a recession, but inflation is still high. Again, their only tool to fight inflation is raising rates. And I just really can't see them backing down on that and going, yeah, we're going to lower rates to stimulate the economy with inflation being so hot, because inflation is destroying the economy as well. So it's like you can't just throw fire on fire. Like, that's not going to work. And that will be evident very, very quickly if they do go down that route. And that's why it's always a good idea to hold gold. That's not financial advice. That's just my life advice. That's my insurance policy. But the average mortgage rate. So David's in Hanoi in New Zealand. Oh, wait, it's 7 a.m. I'm in Hanoi. That's not in New Zealand. That's somewhere else. I don't know where. Where is that, David? Vietnam or somewhere? In New Zealand, it's midday Saturday. Man, that's hard to imagine that they're like tomorrow. It's like tomorrow over there. But anyway, the New Zealand standard mortgage rate up significantly, as you can see on this chart. It dipped obviously down, and that's where we saw activity ramp up and credit availability was pushed to the max. Everybody was locked in their home. It was an incredibly emotional time. And I can imagine in New Zealand, because the lockdowns were very severe in New Zealand, that people were, they were stuck in their home. So they were thinking, we need to buy a new home, like we need more space. And it was the same sort of drive that I saw in the UK. And even to an extent, the same thing happened here in Canada as well. I just don't think it was severe as places like the UK and New Zealand. So yeah, it's crazy, really. So as of the end of March 2022, New Zealand floating mortgage rates had risen by around just over 0.5%, 0.6, from their June 2021 low. Whereas both the 3-year and the 5-year fixed mortgage rate had soared by around 1.9% from their respective lows. Interest.co.nz's David Hargreaves now believes a mortgage earthquake is about to erupt under New Zealand's housing market, with households facing enormous increases in mortgage payments. This is going to be like a kind of rolling mortgage earthquake. Someone who took out a 30-year mortgage last May 2021, fixed for a year, and who is now looking to refi, could find their monthly will go up by exactly a third. In dollar terms, someone who took out an average size mortgage, $329,000 as of May 2021, could face an increase in their monthly payments of $419, over $5,000 a year. An average size first-time home buyer, $548,000 as of May 2021, would cost an extra $698 a month, well over $8,000 a year. So that's really a slap in the face if you're a first-time home buyer, isn't it? That you're getting that happen to you, $698 a month increase on $548,000. Like, that's a substantial increase in your monthly payment, all when inflation is rising. There's all these cross currents that are affecting the household balance sheet that are just attacking it essentially. And that's what's also happening with these rates rising. These examples are both on ANZ and BNZ rates, given their at time of writing market leading hikes. In May 2021, both banks offered 1-year specials at 2.25%, and now both are offering 4.55%. We inflated our housing market by 40% between the start of the pandemic in 2020 and the end of last year. And of course, we inflated the size of mortgages similarly. Now they are huge. Now there's people out there with 7-figure mortgages. It's important to mention what he just said about mortgages there, because it basically shows you what it is. He's calling a spade a spade. He's not realizing it. But if prices are to go up, then that means the credit supply has to expand, e.g., mortgages have to go up. There has to be more mortgage debt out there because somebody, that money's not coming out of thin air. I mean, a lot of these realtors that I see on YouTube and a lot of common folk who just have broken ideas about economics. They hear little snippets in financial media and in the media and on the news, and they hear these realtors talking like they know what they're talking about when they don't have a clue. And I don't claim to be any really smart person by any means of the situation, but at least I have a very good basic understanding of economics, whereas these realtors, they don't have a clue. Like a lot of them were saying from the get-go, oh, the money supply's gone up, and that explains why houses are going up, and that explains why they're not going to come back down. And that is just such a flawed thinking. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent there. So the pain of homeowners is likely to be shared around simply because of the outsized role in the New Zealand economy, the housing market plays. Where the homeowner suffering goes, the economy will follow. It's exactly like Canada, these bubbles are the economy. So when they start to break down, or even velocity starts to decrease, the turnover of homes starts to decrease, even that affects the economy to a large extent. So, New Zealand and Canada, they're in incredibly precarious places, because once you get into one of these doom loops, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle, like the people stop buying houses, that means less construction, that means the economy goes down, more people get unemployed, that means more foreclosure, and it just goes round and round and round. And that's how you get into like a situation like 2008. And growing mortgages, well, not growing mortgages, but growing the credit supply by 40% or whatever to fuel those home price rises in that short period of time is just absolutely insane. But we've seen the same thing here in Canada, and it's less in the US, but it's a similar thing. Prices are up like 20-30% in a year, and depending on which market you're in, they could be up 40-50%. A fortnight ago, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand shocked Kiwi economists when it lifted the official cash rate by 0.5% to 1.5%. Is that true? I seem to remember that it was a 50 basis point hike, but I don't think it was a 100 basis point hike. Sorry, a 1 basis point hike. I don't think it was 100 basis point hike. But anyway, they lifted it in a short period of time anyway, because they had the hike and then they went up 50 basis points on the last hike to 1.5%. And it says here that the RBNZ, which is basically the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, their monetary policy statement also saw the overnight cash rate increase into 2.2%. That's a strange number, 2.2 by the end of the year, and 3.3 by the end of 2023. So, I mean, no end in sight. That pretty much means there's no end in sight. They're gonna continue to hike. So they are obviously same thing as the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, the Fed. They're looking at inflation. They're thinking we've got to control this, and we only have one weapon or tool, as they love to call it, to fight this, and that's raising interest rates. So it's crazy. Yeah, it's the next table highlights the impact of these actual and projected interest rate increases. Yeah, I really like this table, by the way, that they put out. I thought it was fantastic. It makes me crazy that we don't have similar stuff like this in Canada. Like, the data is just so hard to get. But anyway, the next table highlights the impact of these actual and projected interest rate increases by comparing monthly mortgage repayments on the median price New Zealand home at the trough of interest rate cycle, i.e. June 2021, with repayments at the end of March 2022, and the projected increases outlined by the Reserve Bank. This analysis uses average floating mortgage rates, which are assumed to rise in line with the Reserve Bank's projections of interest rates, basically. So this is really, really cool. This chart, I absolutely love what they've done here. So basically, you've got like Auckland here, and you could use this. It illustrates any market, to be honest. New Zealand, Canada, you could apply the same price, the same rates. You're going to get the same jumps in payment. So if you look at this, you've got Auckland, and then it says June 2021. So the median dwelling price was 1,150,000, and the average mortgage rate on the 5-year, I'm guessing that is, was 4.47%. So your monthly repayment on that was $4,645. So then you go to fast forward to March 2022. They're assuming that the price went up ever so slightly to 1.19 million, and the rate has now gone up like nearly 60 basis points to 5.08%, and the payments jumped to $5,157. So it's a substantial rise there. That's like $550 rise in mortgage payments just off that. So it shows you how, 60 basis points may not sound like a lot, but it certainly makes a hell of a difference. And it gets even more scary as we go on here. So this is the forecasted end of 2022. Are they going to get to this? I don't know. Maybe, because to be honest, they're moving so quickly and they're so far ahead of us that, yeah, they might be heading into a recession at that point, but they might have already got the overnight cash rate up to that level by then. So anyway, interestingly enough, the forecast, so they've put it as the same, 1.19 million. So the price unchanged from March 2022, but the rate has gone up 1.18% to 6.28%. And the monthly has rocketed to $5,880 now. So remember, in June 2021, that payment was $4,645. Well, now if you're going to refinance at the end of 2022, you're looking at $5,880. Like, that's a lot of money to just come out and find, especially when your wages are negative, really negative as well, not just slightly negative, really negative. And then we'll use the end of 2023 just because it's on there. I don't think they'd ever get to this. They'd be in such a deep recession by then. And I think it's optimistic that they've left the sale price again. But it helps show the difference in mortgage payments because, again, like I said, you could use this for Canada, the United States. It shows the jumps in payments that you have on a 30-year mortgage. This is a 5-year fixed rate. But how much they make a difference. So end of 2023 forecast is 7.38. So another 1.18 or 1.08 increase in interest rates to 7.38%. Same sale price, 1.19 million. And the monthly is now $6,578. So that payment has gone up from 4,645 to 6,578. There's no way that households would be able to absorb that kind of increase. Just no way. And then they broke it down again. All these links are going to be in the description, or if you're listening to this on Spotify, they'll be in the description of the podcast on there as well. But you can see that all these different things, and you can go to this article and take a look if you're interested. But it basically says, as you can see, monthly mortgage repayments on the median price New Zealand home had already increased from 520 between June 2021 and March 2022. Repayments are projected to rise by another $540 by the end of 2022, and then another $520 by the end of 2023. Thus, if the Reserve Bank's New Zealand forecasts materialize, which they won't, the latter one at least, the end of 2023, then the typical New Zealand household buying the median priced home would pay $1,580 more in monthly mortgage repayments than the median household paid in June 2021, and $1,060 more than the median household paid in March 2022. The rise in monthly mortgage repayments would obviously be steeper in Auckland and Wellington because they're big centres between March 2022 and the end of 2023, given these markets are more expensive than the national median. Regardless, New Zealand's army of highly indebted households are facing an acute interest rate shock, with some recent buyers also facing the prospect of negative equities as property values fall below their purchase price. So that buying during the pandemic was such a great idea, wasn't it? Those people are already going to be going underwater on their purchase. Like, I mean, it's like I said to Jared last night, you know, when I hear stuff like this, like, or when I see something fundamentally like a market that's really, really frothy, I don't want to get involved. Like, it puts me off. Whereas most people, 90% of people, they get interested in that. They're like, oh, something's there. There's a lot of buzz over that. Everybody's getting into real estate. Must be a good time to get into real estate. I mean, guys, when I play YouTube videos on my phone, as I'm sure the same with you, I'm getting advertisements for these stupid seminars, which are essentially Ponzi schemes, most of them. It's basically the people running these seminars on real estate are making all their money from the seminars, and they're not making any of the money from actual property investing and everything like that. And it's like a fool's gold sort of situation. But macro business actually put out a short article again today as well, which really shows, or yesterday, no, it was today. So this really shows how sales are doing, and you can really see it on a long-term chart. Really got to hand it to macro business for this. It's again unconventional economist by unconventional economist. Buyer's market signals sharp New Zealand house price falls. CoreLogic's quarterly property market and economic update notes that the long-awaited slowdown in New Zealand's residential property market has finally arrived, with the first few months of 2022 genuinely weak. The slowdown is evidenced by property sales volume falling to decade lows, driven by high mortgage rates and reduced credit availability. And you can see here the sales volumes. And what I love they've done, let me zoom out a little bit so you can see, oh crap, I've done it on the wrong one. Oh no, this one, there we go. Now you can see. So you can see there that it goes all the way back to 2014. And you can see that it has substantially declined. Like, this is a substantial decline that's happening right now in sales volume. And obviously, sales volumes eventually translate into price reductions. So they're the first sign of the market weakening. And that's what is so alarming about the Canadian housing market right now, is it's so weak already. Like, it blows my mind that people, you know, obviously I can't track every single market, so I just track the one that's local to me, and it so happens to be one of the weakest markets in Canada, so it's a good one to track. And prices have fell like 8% in 2 months, and we've still got all the people buying right now with those rate holds and pre-approvals that, you know, just don't know what's going on. They just want to buy a home. They're all emotional about it. They think they're getting a break right now. And once that ends, God knows what it's going to look at. It's going to look a lot worse than it is right now. I can tell you that. If prices are weak right now, prices are going to get a lot weaker. And Calgary is going to be a leading indicator because psychology changes here quick, because people know that if you just hold the bag on a house, you can end up upside down on that house and lose it, because that's what happened in 2016. And the same patterns repeat themselves, just like the same patterns in Florida, Phoenix, Arizona. The same patterns happen in those places because people think the market, oh, it's indestructible because it's cheaper here, it's more affordable, it's in the Sun Belt, whatever excuses. The sky is blue, it's raining today, so that must mean housing price. People can make up any excuse. Put your stupidest excuses in the chat, but I can't think of any decent ones right now. But the thing is, like, you think about that, it's going to mean that things are going to drastically shift. Like, it's going to mean that, all those stories were told in 2016 as well. Like when housing prices absolutely exploded in Toronto and Vancouver in 2015 into 2016, a lot of people from those metro areas came to Calgary and bought, and they bought in the bubble, and then the Calgary bubble burst and they were all holding the bag. And people were saying the same stories back then, that, oh, Calgary is cheaper than the rest of the country. Calgary's going to be coming like Toronto and Vancouver. And it's sad, really, that people believe these stories, and the financial media love it. And the people on YouTube who just love getting people on the recency bias, because if you want to generate views and you want to grow a channel really quickly, then all you've got to do is just reaffirm what everybody wants to hear. Just go on there and say, yeah, housing prices are going to absolutely explode here. They're going to be like Toronto in 2 years. I've been hearing housing prices in Calgary are going to be like Toronto since I came here, and even before that. So it's like a story that's just come over and over again. But the thing is, there's a pattern here, and I hope you're noticing it. It doesn't matter what market you're in, there's always a flipping story about that market, about why it's indestructible. And what people who don't understand the way the monetary system works can't seem to get their head around, and what we all knew this was coming. If you guys were watching this channel and you guys got to this conclusion as well, I'm sure we all said interest rates, that's probably going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back in the case of the housing market. And oh, would you believe it? It was. And that's just not because we were all geniuses. It's just because probabilities. The housing market is built on credit. It is not built on wealth. There is no wealth in this country. It's a bubble economy, and everybody's wealth is built on the housing market. Once that wealth starts disappearing, you're going to see demand vanish in the economy. People aren't going to be buying boats. People are heavily in debt here. You know how many people buy cars with home equity lines of credit in Toronto? Like, even when I sold my girlfriend's car, the guy who bought it was using his home equity line of credit to buy that car. Like, it is, and I was just like, what? It's like $16,000 and you're using a home equity line of credit to buy this car. I was like, what? But they think they're smart. They think, I'll cash out, housing prices don't go down. And it's just, it's just nuts. There's always a story. In California, it's the ocean, and this place is so beautiful. It's tech, every place has a story, and they are all BS. That's the reality of it. Because as soon as you contract that credit supply, suddenly all those stories, suddenly they're all like not working anymore, are they? Everybody just forgets about them. God, it's just hilarious. But anyway, I'm getting off topic there. I kind of went off topic there. CoreLogic also notes, so this is the mortgage lending that you can see here. So you can see it's dropped significantly. You can see down here, it's going down to, and I'm guessing this is the pandemic where it dropped initially during the pandemic and then rebounded completely, just ripped off. I mean, if you look at this decline, how small it was, like it has gone triple almost for the same amount of time. So that void was filled by like 5 times extra. And you can see it's declining there. And you can see the declines again are falling to decade lows. And what is that not good for? That's not good for banks, because once the velocity slows down in the monetary system, that's when things really start going wrong for the banks. Because if the banks in New Zealand are like the banks in Canada, they make all their money through mortgage lending or securitizing the mortgages, to be specific. Because what they're doing is they're taking that $100,000 mortgage and they turn that into a $2 million product, because they're creating all these different derivative products that you can buy. They're slotting, they're basically taking that mortgage, slicing it into a pie, fitting it into all these different products that they make for pension funds. And it's a joke, really. But anyway, so CoreLogic states that while new listings has been pretty typical for the time of year, total listings have risen on the back of softer buyer demand. This is giving buyers more choice and seeing some cheeky offers. Cheeky offers. God, I love that. Only an Aussie would say something like that. You know, it's so weird because Aussies and people in New Zealand, they use all the language that I'm used to hearing in England. And here in Canada, they don't use any of that. It's pretty much all like American language. And they've kind of took on the more American English, I would say. Whereas like Aussies and New Zealanders, not New Zealanders, Kiwis. That's what I'm trying to think of. They're using all the British lingo, the English old lingo. Anyways, this is giving buyers more choice and seeing some cheeky offers being accepted by vendors, some of which are less confident about getting further higher offers than the first one submitted. Accordingly, the shift to a buyer's market that CoreLogic has been anticipating this year has moved more quickly than we had expected and is probably here right now, which implies considerably less pressure on prices. Thus, with buyers now feeling that they have the upper hand when it comes to offers, it's no surprise to see that price pressures have faded away. CoreLogic concludes by noting that for the rest of 2022, it's likely to be more of the same: higher interest rates, lower sales volumes, and flatter housing prices. So that sounds, you know, when I hear stuff like that, I think banking crisis. That's what you should think too. With outright falls on the cards in some parts of the country. However, it still thinks national average property values could hold roughly steady this year, with falls in some areas offset by rises elsewhere. The final point is where I strongly disagree with CoreLogic. According to its report, mortgage rates are projected to rise by more than 3% from the pandemic low by 2024. If this was to occur, then the average monthly mortgage repayment across New Zealand would soar by about 40% from its pandemic low. This would add around $1,300 a month in repayments to the medium price New Zealand dwelling, in pushing many Kiwis into severe mortgage stress and shunting housing prices starkly lower. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, you know, to be honest. It's actually interesting where that guy used to work. He used to work at the Australian Treasury. That's interesting. But it is very interesting what's happening in New Zealand. We got to continue to look at New Zealand. And, if David, do you know where this house is? It's in a place called Portobello. But I don't know about you, but this house, it looks flipping beautiful. And it's $1 million, which is about 800,000. But look at the views. And just look at the greenery and just look at that. That looks just incredibly beautiful to have that from your master bedroom. Pretty nice house. But yeah, that's in a place called Portobello, wherever the heck that is. I'm not sure if that's a middle of nowhere or not, but yeah, it's good to get an image in your head of what it really looks like when you're looking at these markets. But this insanely nice house. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's the New Zealand housing market. So that's a wrap on that. And it really shows what's going on there, that everything's declining. They're seeing sales volumes drop through the floor, and that is going to translate into prices. Prices are down already a lot in certain markets. They fell like 6% in a month. So pricing pressures are going to continue. And if households get stressed because they can't afford their mortgage payments, then they're going to have to sell the house. And if they have to sell the house, then that means they're going to need a buyer. And if there's no buyers, that means they're going to have to reduce the price. And if they're underwater on their mortgage and they overextended, which we know most people did, everybody wanted extra space. People weren't thinking smart. And again, I'll relate it to this, again, people give too much credit to the average Joe and Jane. And I'm not meaning to sound like I'm on a high horse or anything like that. This is just the reality of the way things are. Like, this is just the way people are wired, unfortunately. It's not my fault that people just have a broken understanding of how to base their financial decisions anyway. But like, let's say you have somebody move from Toronto to Calgary, which is a cheaper market. So we would think, like, somebody like me would think that that person is selling their house, let's say for $1 million in Mississauga. And they are thinking, I'm going to buy something cheap in Calgary, and I'm going to pocket the cash. I'm going to buy like a $200,000 condo or something like that, and I'm going to pocket the cash. No, that's not what happens, guys. It's not what happens. What they do is they go and buy $1 million house in Calgary, which is much larger, so they can look more rich to their friends. But obviously, it's all funny money. They're still highly in debt. And actually, when it comes down to it, like what happened in 2016, when the same thing happened, a lot of people come over, they buy these bigger houses, and they can't afford to maintain them. They can't afford to pay the bills, and they end up in foreclosure. And that's why if you just Google like Calgary foreclosures, you're going to be seeing a lot of big, expensive houses go into foreclosure. And I'm already seeing it. Seen a couple on there for $1.5, $2.5 million going into foreclosure. These people can't afford these homes. So, it's crazy. It's the way it is. David said Dunedin Peninsula. There's a really famous golf course, I think, Dunedin. Really famous golf course. I remember somebody talking about that at one point or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, it's Steve Soretsky will have clients to buy it. Nice one, Trent. What's Canada's GDP? Fake, because it's adjusted to a completely fake inflation rate. I think they reported higher GDP, about 1%, if I remember correctly, for the GDP for Canada. But you have to remember the CPI is even more manipulated in Canada than the United States. If you actually adjusted it using the deflator for the real rate of inflation, we would in fact be in a recession. but they can make the figures look good. Like, but the reality is they can't make the economy function good. So even though the figures look good, that doesn't translate into the real economy. We're essentially in a recession. That's essentially where we're at. So yeah, it's the funny thing. What economic principles apply today? I'm not sure what you mean by that. But yeah, revert to mean says overextended by 5. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. So anyway, guys, I'm going to break this live stream here and head into the next live stream, which is going to be a story about Canadians binging on more leverage. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this live stream. Sorry, I had to move the live stream. And just a quick update. I'm now changing the videos. I'm going to be releasing videos during the week instead of releasing videos at the weekend. So the days are going to be slightly different. But anyway, same content, same 2 videos a week. So anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next stream. Take care of yourselves. Peace and love, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks.